number 13 in the homework?
13? The homework hasn't come due yet. I mean, I might mention some things about it.
Can you help us with the equation?
All right, let's take a look.
Oh, thank you. Also, I think you entered the answer for number 3 incorrectly.
Okay, I will take a look at that as well. It's been known to happen, so it's not impossible.
Am I wrong with that? I think because of like tax Friday or something.
Yeah, most of them are. I had to like look up a few things that I knew was able to make sure, but I didn't try to understand when she was talking about it. So, but then after I did it, I was looking at yeah, I guess it's just
Yes.
oh. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm really saying. We like it's very
Yes. Okay. Yes. It's very warm today.
Wait, it's the
All right, let's see. So, first of all, something about problem number 3, you say? Okay. That should be fine. Right? Remember, like, whatever tax amount you find in question 2, right? That's how much tax you pay. And your total gross income is 100,000. So it's a percentage of 100,000.
Okay, I thought it was based off of 70,000 because that was the taxable income. So
Yeah, so you pay tax on your taxable income, but like as far as you were thinking, what happened, right? I made 100,000
okay.
and I paid whatever, right? So
Okay.
your average tax rate is based on your total income. Okay? Like in class when we did the example, I said the student taxable income is 100, so like we can skip the step of finding what the taxable income is. But really, like we're looking for average tax rate, it's as percent of your total. Right? Yeah.
So you would find it on the total income and not the taxable income?
Yeah, so your average tax would be as percent of total gross income, right? Because that basically means out of the total money you made, what's your average tax liability, like, per dollar?
So the actual would be from 70,000.
Right, so when you calculate your taxes, right, that would be all of that will be based on the 70,000 taxable income, right? But you actually made 100, so your average tax rate, as far as like what happened at the end of the day, it's based off how much you made. Yes.
I have a question about
Okay.
what exactly are you looking for?
Well, you obviously can't give me anything you don't have.
Yeah.
So, so whatever you have at that point would be correct, regardless. But yes, I mean, basically, ideally, you would have an outline of basically of the topic that you want to cover. if you have collected some data or did some analysis or whatever, you can give me whatever rough draft that you have. I just basically want to make sure that you guys are on track to actually doing something and collecting some data if that's what your project requires, or gathering some background research if that's what your project requires, so that you have something is happening, right?
We just want an idea of what exactly we are going to cover for our paper, basically. We just want to know what we're looking at, and we just want to see what that actually relates to the data, stuff like that.
Well, I mean, essentially, I want to see that you have been working on it, right? So you give me an outline, this is what we've been looking at, this is what we plan to do, have a rough draft, that's like awesome, it's cool. I mean, it can be incomplete, right? It doesn't have to be like a whole paper. It's just, here is the stuff that we'll do, here is some partial data or whatever. Right? So basically stuff that shows me that you're not leaving it until the last day of the semester. Yes.
So when you say an outline, do you mean bullet points or do you mean paragraphs?
Whatever outline style you prefer is fine by me. Right? So I mean, in general, like when you're working on like a big research project, it helps to have like a brief bullet point outline, like just to know what you're going to cover. Then maybe you want to expand that and make it more of a paragraph outline. And then maybe you're going to flesh it out and make it into a whole paper draft. So I mean, whatever it is you're actually in the process is fine, right? So whatever works for you.
When is the final research paper?
I'm planning to have our presentations probably sometime in the last few weeks of the semester. So whenever your presentation is due, probably thereabouts is when I would like to see your final paper. I mean, really, like you can make a presentation and then polish off the paper and submit it at the end of the semester. That's also fine. Right? But you have to have prepared all your research and know what you have found and what you're going to talk about by the time you make the presentation, which is going to be a few weeks before that. Okay? Any other questions? All right. So I mean, just I'm not going to be very picky about as far as your rough draft and outline and stuff. But I don't want it to be like 5 words, right? Like, it has to be, you have to actually have done some work with that for it, right? Not like, oh yeah, we're going to talk about that. Okay? And of course, feel free to email me with any questions at any time. So, if there is anything that comes up that we haven't discussed just now, just let me know. It's fine. Right? Okay, so 13 you said. Let's see what's going on with question number 13. Okay. So how do you think we're going to approach this problem? Now imagine that we only invested one lump sum of $1,000 today. Right? And then we're letting it sit for 10 years at 10%. Can we find out how much it will turn into at the end of 10 years? Right? Now you just say, I'm putting in $1,000 today. It's going to sit around for 10 years at 10%. You can find out how much it will be, right? Now imagine we only invested one lump sum at the end of the first year, so in 1 year. Can we find out how much that one is going to turn into? That's a yes, right? So how many years does it have to grow until we start counting our money? If we invest the only one at the end of the first year? All right, 9 years, right? Because we start from time 0 to time 10, that would be 10. If we start from time 1 year later to time 10, it would be 9 years worth of growth, right? Now imagine that we only put in one investment at the end of 2 years. How many years does that one have to grow? All right, there you go. And you can find out how much that one will turn into by the time end of year 10 rolls around, right? It will have grown by 10% for 8 years. Now, if you want to find out what would happen if you invest 1,000 right now, 1,000 in 1 year, and 1,000 in 2 years, do you think possibly it could be the case that you will end up with the sum of what happens from each one? I think so too. It's possible. Right? So does it make sense? I can basically see what will happen with each one of these $1,000 investments by the time 10 years rolls around. And then you just add them up, and that's what you will have in total. Right? So I mean, and alternatively, you can try to do it step by step. You'll say, this one I'm putting in 1,000, growing at 10%, so I'll get 1,100. And I'm putting in a second 1,000, so now I have 2,100. Now this 2,100 is going to grow at 10%, and we're going to get 2,310, right? And then I'm putting in another 1,000, and I have 3,310, and now that's going to grow by 8 more years, and it'll be the same thing, right? So whichever way you want to approach it, whether you want to actually imitate what will actually happen, or you just want to separate the three and see what will happen to each one, you come up with the same final result. Okay? Making sense? Okay. Give it a try. Or don't try. Maybe. Yes. Let's see. What is number 15? Uh-huh. Well, remember we talked about rates of inflation and how that reduces the purchasing power of our dollars. So in this case, we're saying that this lottery will pay you $1 million in 30 years. So right away you're saying, wait a second, I know that in 30 years, $1 is going to be worth like 10 pennies or whatever it is. Like, it's not going to be as valuable. So I want to know what will be the today's dollar equivalent purchasing power of this $1 million that I'll receive in 30 years, right? So, if inflation rate is 3% per year, you need to find, essentially what will be the equivalent price level of stuff in 30 years, right? So it'll be some amount today that when it grows at 3% per year for 30 years is exactly equal to $1 million. Right? So you basically set that up, and you can solve for what this amount has to be, so that it grows for 3% 30 years, and it'll be $1 million.
Also, you're solving for PV.
That's right? Because you want to know what is the purchasing power in today's dollars, right? Okay? And it will be something disappointingly small. Okay, any other questions about any of the problems? Okay. So I hope you all will get 100%. That's the goal. We're no excuse. If something isn't clear, ask me a question. You made a mistake, do it again. All right? So unless you just don't do it, you all have to be 100%. Okay. All right, now let us discuss our traditional logic puzzles. If you would like to fill out a solution, I'll take it. Yeah. Why is that?
Because if you look at A, if it says B is a name, then that means that if A was a knight and telling the truth, then B would have to be lying. And by B saying A and C are the same type, that means that it, that can happen because the same type it has to be. I don't know.
And it has to be, right, so here's a name that has to be the Y, right? If they're going to be of different types, and A is a knight, C has to be the name, right? But what about another other possibility? Actually, it's what? Yeah?
If A is a name, and B is a knight, and it's something that ends in the same type, that's A is a name, C is a name.
All right. So that is the how this problem works out. It doesn't matter what A and B are, regardless of which possibility you follow through with the logical step. C turns out to be the name no matter what, right? So, I mean, you can guess that that's the reason why the problem is asking me what is C. It's not asking me what are A and B because it's not possible to even determine what they are, right? So, that's it. In general, we could say, okay, let's control these problems. I can start with the first one and say, well, Q10 if this guy is a name, and follow through the step and see what happens, right? And then you just pretend that you do the other thing. Follow through the step and see what happens, right? And maybe you use this logical presentation or something like that. You eliminate the possibility. Right? So in this case, we can say, all right, let's imagine that there is a knight and I'll use the code. Right? And so if that is the case, now what you've done is true, and therefore B must be name. I mean, if C is the name, therefore C is Y, and therefore M C must be a different type. And therefore B must also be a different type from Y. So then we say, okay, let's remove logical preconditions here. So it's not interesting, let's try the other option. The other option is that A is a name. Alright, so here's the name that needs to be blind of B is the name, therefore B must be a name. And when he says A and C are of the same type, he's telling true. Therefore C must be of the same type as A, which is the name. Alright, so regardless of which of the two possibilities we have, C is going to be a name no matter what. But we don't know what A and B are, and we know that they're end up being different types. But, regardless, C has to be a name. Right? Make sense? Okay. So, by now we all should be pretty familiar with this, the knights and knaves framework. You can see how we can make up a bunch of different logical puzzles to tickle our brains and stuff. So now let me introduce another player in the game, and that would be normals. And they can either lie or tell the truth. Sort of like real people. That's why they're called normals. Right? So in this problem, just to clarify, we have three people, A, B, and C, and the problem tells us that we have one of each type in this group. Right? So one of them must be a knight, one of them is a knave, one of them is a lord. So now see if you can figure out which one is which. ready to go? Okay. So we'll discuss this one next time. Now let's see. I believe we left off talking about supply and demand and market price setting mechanisms. So let us continue at this point. Alright, so last time we discussed how an exchange mechanism basically, or really a market mechanism, has people putting in their offers to buy something and their offers to sell something. Right now, and on an organized, centralized exchange with uniform goods, you actually see the aggregation of all these offers happening, right? Because we say like on the stock exchange, all of the people's offers to buy or sell that stock, will all get entered into the same table of orders, right? You can see what's happening. Now, for other goods, even though we don't have a nice, centralized order book, and maybe the items and the goods are not necessarily really uniform, but the way the economy works is still the same thing. Somebody who's a seller says, I have some stuff and I'm willing to sell it at this price in various ways, right? For example, you go to ShopRite, it has a bunch of stuff and they post a bunch of prices in there, right? So that is their asking price for a bunch of different stuff, right? And then you go to a different store and they have asking prices for a bunch of other different stuff, right? Now, in this day and age, we don't really have very much closing haggling going on unless you go to like a flea market or garage sale or something like that. You don't generally go to the store and say, the orange is pretty expensive. I'll give you $1 a pound instead of like $1.50 or something like that, right? Because it kind of takes time, and actually you can try it, and if you see like the department manager there, she might give you a discount. And it's not illegal to bargain about prices in a supermarket or whatever, right? So there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that if everybody did that, it would take a lot of time. So it's not really common occurrence, but you can do that, right? And generally, like if you go to smaller stores, it's basically it becomes more and more reasonable to do so because there's not like a huge crowd of people who all basically get their stuff done and get it out of there, right? So, when you're saying, I don't like your price or $1.50 a pound, and I'll give you $1, doesn't mean this price, right? You're saying I'm ready to pay $1 a pound for it, right? Or if you're, in a flea market, you say, I'm, this lamp is kind of crappy. I'm not going to give you $10. I'll give you $2, right? That's a good price for this lamp. Or maybe it's a good one, right? There are different things in the conversation. Right? So, in other words, you have, it's maybe less efficient because you can't say, you can't even look around and see what are everybody's asking prices for tomatoes. It's not so easy. Like it's kind of really look at what the data is and see what's up, like show you cost and say what's the price of tomatoes. Right? Whereas on an exchange, you go and you see everything, which is a lot more efficient. You know what is the supply and demand for this particular good. But at the end of the day, it's the same mechanism, right? It is the mechanism of the buyers and sellers hopefully to eventually come together and conduct mutually beneficial trade, right? Because obviously the seller is never going to sell unless it is beneficial to him, and the buyer is never going to buy unless it is beneficial to him. Right? So, in a free market, trades are only conducted when both parties are going to benefit, right? Otherwise, they just go home and same trade, right? So, for the moment, for the purposes of this position, and for the purposes of what we're going to do again when we talk about financial products and investments and stocks and bonds and things, we're going to look at an actual order book for an exchange marketplace, right? All the way to that. But just keep in mind that the same idea happen in all sorts of things, including housing and vehicles and education and basically anything you can think of. If people are buying it, people are selling it, in effect, we have some people asking for more money to it, and a bunch of other people saying, I'm going to pay some other amount, right? And some of them use the middle and actually mistake, right? So let's look at say you already discussed we have an order book for an asset, right? And so we have some bids. Bids are people who want to buy some amount of this asset, and you have some ask from that people who want to sell some amount of this asset, right? So when you look maybe on some websites like finance, like Google Finance, after you get like a quote for some stock, right? It will tell you price, $20, 32 cents, something like that, right? Now, what this price is, it doesn't actually mean that you will be able to buy or sell your stock at that price. It just means that the most recent trade that occurred, where somebody sold and somebody bought, happened at whatever I said, right? But it just happened at that price. But it doesn't necessarily mean that if you go in now, you will be able to buy or sell at that price. In order to know what price you will be able to buy or sell at, you need to know what is the order book, right? What is the best bid or the best price, right? So, for example, we might begin with making up some numbers, right? We have, 100 at 9 rupees, another 200 at 18 rupees, and 200 price, right? 5 rupees, right? So these are prices per unit, and this is how many units we're going to buy, right? And so these are right? And then here we have people orders who want to sell, right? Maybe somebody wants to sell 100 at 9.25, and somebody else wants to sell another 100 at 20, right? And somebody wants to sell 200 at 21. Like generally, for liquid, like for liquid investment, it's not going to be $1, half a dollar, going to be pennies, right? But just for the purpose of expedition and just show us more on this, right? So, and for example, you might see that the quote might say, last price, 19.5. Right, so assuming nothing, nothing, that given from the order you move all the time, that people will cancel their order and move it up every time, right? Assuming nothing, what it means is that probably somebody came in and took up a part of this 19.5 order, right? So if you want to sell something in 19.5, I'll take it, right? Or maybe, somebody came in and said, you want to buy something 19, I'll sell you something 19. And so then the last price is going to be reported as 19, right? But if you just look at the last price, then you don't really know what the current state of the order book is, right? You could, you could say 19, no, it looks like a good price, I'll buy some, but hey, there's nobody selling at 19, right? So it's, what the state of the order book is kind of important. It's also possible, again, not being extremely likely for a very liquid, very liquid security like stock or other corporations that trade like 100 times a second. But something that's liquid, it could be at a very price, and then nobody really traded, and the order in the book shifted now. And so maybe the last price is 19, but let's say if this guy decides to fold out, and then some other guy came in and decided he wants to buy another at 9.5, so now the last price is even outside the best bid that quote. So it's not a very rich and not a very significant instrument, anything can happen. So ideally, you want to know what is happening on the book. What are the orders, right? If you are coming in and want to buy, you want to sell, these are the prices that you have to accept. And you don't have to accept them. You can come in and just say, you know, I'm not really happy with this price. You know, I'll just put in a bid at 18.5, right, or 100, or whatever, and wait. And probably somebody will sell you, right? Or you can say, you know, or if you're selling, you can say, you know, or you can say, you know what, not really happy with $0.5 of that spread, let me put something here in the middle. I'm not going to say. Right? And when somebody wants to sell, they'll say, hey, that's invested, I have both. Right? And once you get a better price, then you go in and you can add something else. Right? So it is, you know, it's, well, this is sort of, you kind of get an idea of how this exchange-based trading is happening, how it works, what all these things going on. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. Right, and so in general, as a result, right, you can see that there is going to be sometimes the best ask and sometimes the best bid, right? So the highest price will be willing to pay for it, and the lowest price will be willing to sell it, right? So, you know, this, in effect, is the intersection of supply and demand when we remember we discussed the supply and demand graph, right? Right? And so, you know, we said that, you know, the equilibrium price is somewhere here. Well, this equilibrium price is, you know, here between the remaining best bid and best ask, right? So here we have the, you know, here we have the demand, right? Five. Right? And so we're saying that here are the 100 people who want to sell at the price which is higher than the equilibrium price. Right? This would be these people right here. Right? And then, you know, and here's a 100 people who want to buy. So the price is lower than this price now. And that would be these people right here. Right? Now here's the question to you. Where are these people? So where are those people? And so where are they on this thing? That's right. Those people already traded. Right? So the only part of the supply and demand graph that you see on the variable is the people who haven't traded yet. Right? They're the ones who want to sell for more than they can and buy for less than they can. Right? All these people on the left, they have already traded. Because this guy was willing to sell for something less than this price. So obviously, at some point, some of these guys came in and said, I'll take it. Right? So they're willing to buy for a higher price. So we don't really see the stuff that's already happening on the left. Well, except that you might have like in historical trade volume, you know, that only units that really have changed hands, you know, for 5,000 pounds. So these people, right? And of course, because, you know, the market price converted some of these data out right here, you know, in an efficient market where everybody knows what's the supply and what's the demand going on, these people are not going to be selling for this much, even though they're willing to do that if foreseen to sell. They're not going to be doing that because they know that the going price is this much. So they're going to be selling, they're going to be posting their offers close to here, right? They're not going to say, oh, I was supposed to do this, right? Not going to happen. Same thing with the with the buyers, these guys, and they're willing to pay some higher price. But they're not going to go and say, hey, I'll take your offer over here. Like if you see that, the certain house can go over here, they're going to open it for a price. Even if it's a marketplace where everybody knows where they're doing it. Right? Make sense? Any questions? Right now, in a less efficient market where everybody doesn't know what the market clearing price is, everybody look around and well, what's that price? What's that price? Right? There are information acquisition costs. Right? It takes you time and effort to go around and to represent the data. What are all the different people bidding out? Right? So, for example, just as a trivial example from daily life, let's say you're out, in the market for, a couple pounds of bananas. Right? So, what you could do is you could say, well, I'm going to take half hour of my day here. I'm going to call 10 different produce stores in my neighborhood, and I'm going to ask them what their price of bananas, right? And then I'm going to go to the one that has the lowest price of bananas, right? Half hour of the time really is kind of too much effort for a couple of pounds of bananas, right? And so maybe what you're going to do is you go to whatever your usual stomping ground is, wherever you buy your vegetables, and these are bananas that are not egregiously priced, you'll just take it, right? Well, if you're always shopping in the area, you might notice some patterns, like, for example, that, hey, the Save-A-Lot always has bananas for 39 cents, whereas they are 49 cents in ShopRite. And no, I'm not going to buy bananas at ShopRite, I'll go to Save-A-Lot, right? But other prices change all the time. Like for Save-A-Lot, they're 39 cents bananas, they're lost leaders. They're like, hey, check out our cheap bananas. Everybody can buy a banana. Right? But other stuff, like the price kind of change up and down. And sometimes maybe Save-A-Lot has cheapest sweet potatoes, and sometimes maybe Bottom Dollar has cheapest sweet potatoes. Right? And sometimes maybe ShopRite has cheapest potatoes. And you're not going to like just call them and get like the best of prices of everything every time you go, because you know where it's different. You're just going to kind of make your rounds, and if you see something reasonably priced, you're going to get it. And sometimes you'll get the best price. Because you say, hey, first I went to Save-A-Lot, and I saw some people in the bottom, and then we went to Bottom Dollar and ShopRite and Kmart. It turned out that their sweet potatoes were more expensive, so I got the best deal. Right? But other times, as you make around, you say, hey, Save-A-Lot has some good sweet potatoes, I'll buy some, and then you go to ShopRite, and you go like, oh, ShopRite has them even cheaper. You're not going to go back and return them and get them to ShopRite. Right? So they're cost. Like just so you know, like there's sort of cost to information acquisition if we don't have this sort of nice, organized central exchange where everybody plays a bit now. Right? So in the case of a market for say IBM shares, it's not going to happen that you buy from somebody and then it turns out somebody else is selling cheaper. So everything is here. If you want to buy, you know that this is the best price. There's nobody out there who wants to sell IBM shares for any cheaper than that. Right? Now, again, it's kind of a funny trivial example with food shops and stuff. But really the same idea applies when you go buy less liquid goods with less efficient market, like houses or cars, right? There is no like central national clearinghouse for cars or anything like that. Now there are certain exchange like markets, like maybe Craigslist or eBay, or people close to market stuff, because you sort of get an idea of what you're going prices. But they're all in different locations and stuff, right? They're not going to necessarily go over to Arizona to pick up a car, because it costs like $500 cheaper. It will cost you more to like go there and back, right? So the market is more localized, right? And then not everybody everything in all places, we might look in places, and we don't see all offers that are out there, so like you can use such and such card as you might be looking for, right? And so you go to Craigslist, you go to eBay, but you don't really see everything. Some people post like some other classified sites, some people just because from bond is for sale stuff, right? Some people, sell it to from like sell it to the dealer, and then the dealer has them sitting on your wall, right? So again, you are not necessarily going to end up with the best price, but there is a certain amount of effort you want to put into figuring out what is the going rate and figuring out getting some quotes and like collecting some data. But you're not going to spend like 2 weeks of your life researching the car market necessarily for one car like a month. And you spend a few days doing some research and figure it out, and then you get an idea of what the price is, and then plus or minus $100 doesn't really make that much of a difference. Like you don't want to overpay that $1,000, right? There's certain frictions in sort of the market for less liquid real-life goods, right? So just, but the basic idea is the same, right? You got some assets, you got some goods. Right? Now, let's just see. The next thing I want to mention. So in general, we can, if we look at sort of the data for supply and demand for some particular goods, and we can draw a very convenient plot for cumulative supply and demand at different places. So for example, for this particular good, we can say, all right, what's going on? Well, I have some supply of 100 units at 20. Right, so 20, I have 100 units. Right, then I have some more supply of 200 units at 21. So here's 21, and 200 units. Maybe some another 100 at 21.5, or add that. Oh, look at that, 21.5, and another 100. Right, so that you can see that this is basically the cumulative amount of supply up to that price. Right? And so it'll be, some kind of a step function going up, but it's not possible to have a limited supply. So at each point, supplies or extra supplies zero or positive, right? So the higher the price is, the more cumulative supply there will be up to that point. Right? And so then the same thing is going to happen on the bid side, right? So when you have, 1926 over there, plus 100, and you have another 1925, that's another 100, and another 119, and you can get, sort of good size, two years and nine months. And so for any particular asset, we can draw this sort of idea, this sort of graph showing the cumulative given asset. Right, and naturally the price, as things happen, most of the trading is going to be happening somewhere in this range, right? When you're going to either back, or you're going to bid. Somebody's doing first, some stuff in the middle, and they're going to trade. This is where the trading happens. And these guys are kind of sitting there, and they're hoping that somebody will come in and they want to buy, and the market sell at the same time, until they're going to sell a market. And maybe, these guys are hoping that somebody's going to come in and want to sell a bunch of stuff at the same time, and then they're going to sell a bunch of goods at the same time, and they're going to go to the price. Right? Any questions? Is it making sense so far? Okay. So now let's how do you reduce the idea of arbitrage? Does anybody know what arbitrage means? So basically it means that you have different prices for the same goods in different markets. And when you build that arbitrage, you buy it on the cheap, and you turn around and you later you sell it for more money, right? So you make risk plus arbitrage profit. Right? If they're the same good, it's trading at different prices. You just keep doing, hypothetically, you can just keep doing it all day. I get it, sell it, right? You take your money, you get it some more, you sell it some more, and you make an infinite amount of money. Right? Now, of course, the point is that if we have two markets for the same good, they have slightly different prices, the price differential is not going to persist for very long. And the reason is that the market doesn't have infinite depth. Right? The market has certain amount of supply and demand at different prices. So you can imagine that for some reason we have like a separate exchange for the goods, and maybe have a slightly different order book, right? Maybe have something like this and something like that for the product of the demand. So if you see that, and you say, just say, you come in there, and all of a sudden you see this situation, right? So what are you going to do? You're going to profit from the information that you see here. This is your opportunity to make this free money. Go ahead, do it.
Are we gonna go buy it from the lower market and sell it in the higher market?
That's exactly what you're doing. Alright? You're going to look at this and say, hey, check it out. I can buy it over here for $20. And then come around and sell it over here for, I don't know what it is, Alright? So if I buy, say if I buy 100 units for 20 and sell those 100 units for 21.5, I just made $150. How sweet is that? Didn't have to work. Right? Buy for cheap, sell for more. Awesome. Alright? Now the problem is, right, you're not going to be able to make infinite amounts of money. Right? Because once you buy, there's money units at home. That ass is filled in time. Right? So now if you want to buy more, you have to go to the next guy who's here at 21. And you sell 200 units at 21. And in the meantime here, this bid at 21.5, you just sold that, right? You're maybe the next best price for, I don't know, 21.3 or whatever, right? So it looks like there's still room that you can buy some more at 21 and you sell at 21.3. And you can do that, so you do that with 200 shares and you can get another 60 bucks. But then those guys are sold, and those guys are sold. And so now, there's no more profit opportunity. Right? So as a result, you can see that the actions of people who are taking advantage of this arbitrage opportunity are going to drive the prices of the same or similar goods in different stages into equilibrium. Right? Because it's not possible that the price will remain different for very long, right? Because there's free money on the table. People like picking up free money off the table, right? And so they're going to do it. They're going to basically buy, sell it cheap, and sell it over another exchange, right? And so that's going to drive the prices into equality. Or if not equality, at least the prices will be close enough that the different trading and transfer fees are larger than the profit that you make. Right, so for example, you can imagine that maybe, the trading is like, say, 0.5%, right? So the prices can be within 0.5%. And there's still no arbitrage opportunity because when you buy here and you sell there, you'll pay 0.5% here and you'll pay 0.5% there, so you pay 1%, so you don't make any money, right? So the prices will not be, the student numbers going to have completely equal prices, equal to that spread, but it will be close enough that it is within the margin of the trading fee, right? So this basically suggests that hypothetically, if there's all sorts of people working around and all sorts of different assets, and checking the prices and all this other stuff. So there's always somebody looking out for a profit opportunity, and the price of the different goods or price of the same good in different exchanges, they're going to be basically at parity with how much utility you get out of it. Right? So hypothetically, you could say that let's imagine that right? Let's say that new cars are a substitute good to used cars. Right? That's the way they are. Right? You have a choice. You know, buy a used car or buy a new car. So new cars generally cost more than used cars. And hypothetically, the reason they cost more is because for some reason you get more utility out of a new car than you get out of a used car. Right? So one might expect that if I need a substitute good, so hypothetically the prices of the two goods will be in equilibrium so that the price per unit of utility that you get in each one is exactly the same, right? Otherwise, if somebody sees that, you know what, used cars are really an awesome deal, and they seem to be too cheap relative to new cars, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to buy a bunch of used cars and tell people, hey, check it out. I have an awesome deal, and we can try to buy them for a price, right? And they will get still a good deal relative to bank or buck as far as the car, right? Or maybe new cars are too cheap relative to the used cars, and so then you might buy a bunch of new cars, and then you could try to sell them to people and say, hey, that's a really good deal. Or you might drive them and then right? So there is so even it's probably not quite as easy to conduct arbitrage instead of between substitute goods, because you have to assume that eventually people are going to figure out that something is mispriced. You have to convince them that you're offering a different deal. But still, in the long term, you might imagine that prices of different goods are going to be in equilibrium as far as the bang for buck you can get from different types of goods. Right? So, in general, this is sort of the idea, to put it in terms of real goods and real person, this is the idea of the efficient market hypothesis. The things are priced in such a way that no matter where you go, you get about the same bang for buck everywhere. If something was a really good deal, people would have already bought it up to the point where the price shifts further up and it's no longer such a good deal, right? But people are going to buy the good deal until such a point that it is about as good as anything else, right? There's a difference here. People are going to keep buying this good deal, taking advantage of the cheap price until the price shifts high enough that it's no longer any better than the deal anywhere else. Right? So assuming a relatively efficient market, it basically says, if you want to buy a car, it doesn't really matter if you buy a new one or a used one, you're going to get the same bang per buck either way. If you're thinking if you want to buy housing versus rent housing, it doesn't really matter what you do because the prices would have been driven to some kind of equilibrium as far as bang per buck by market participants. Now, if you want to buy a computer, it doesn't really matter where you go because actions of market participants would have driven up the prices of things that were priced too low, driven down the prices of things that were priced too high. You'd be getting basically the same bang per buck anywhere you go. Right? You understand the idea of why that is? Why the sort of efficient market hypothesis implies that no matter what you do, the prices are in equilibrium as far as bang per buck for different goods or substitute goods. Right? Any questions so far? Is this making sense? Okay. So now, as it happens, right, that's what, if the efficient market hypothesis is true for the real, less liquid goods or less centralized exchanges, that would be the case. As it happens, it's not necessarily the case. Right? So the market for liquid financial instruments, that would be basically priced in a no arbitrage way so that it is not possible to make acquisitive profit because really yields getting over there. Right? The market for real goods is a lot less efficient, a lot less liquid. Right? Number one, we already talked about the problem of supply and demand aggregation. So when you don't even know the complete information for the whole state of supply and demand for liquid. Another thing is that again, people have different preferences in different ratios. Right? There may be a class of people who really likes, having a new car, and they're willing to pay an extra premium, but other people who do not derive the personal benefit from having a new car are not really going to, they're not going to be willing to pay that extra premium because they don't get this super good personal feeling having a new car. Or some people might be getting a bunch of personal utility from owning a home. And so they might be willing to pay an extra premium that somebody who doesn't get this sort of extra personal utility. Right? Maybe it's not going to be for them, it will be a different kind of deal, right? So as a result, the market for goods is not, you can't really say that it's either efficient nor about pricing no matter what, because different people have different preferences for different, the goods that would be a lot of dimensions of quality, a lot of dimensions of attributes. So different people have different preferences, so you really have to look at what your preferences are relative to the dimensions of quality of the different goods. Right? So still, at the end of the day, in general, the closer the market is to efficiency, the less important it is to spend a lot of time to figure out what you need to do. Right? So if it's really close to efficiency, go there, and eventually about to be really efficient. If you're really far from efficiency, then you might want to invest effort in learning more about what is the schedule of supply and demand, what are your preferences relative to the different attributes of the goods, and try to get the best deal for you. So in terms of making, vehicle and housing decisions, these are generally less efficient models. Right? Because people have different preferences for housing. There are a lot of dimensions of housing, a lot of dimensions of cars. So you have to make your own decisions. You have to analyze your preferences. You have to examine the market. What gives you more bang for buck, right? So just as an example here, this is a sample order book for an actual asset. So you can see that there is a bunch of, on the right here is the supply. These are the asks people are willing to sell. Right, you can see that somebody is willing to sell, maybe 100 at 24.1, and then here some people are willing to sell maybe another 500 and 24.2, and so on and so forth, right? And so we can, once we build this cumulative supply on the order book, you can see that it's kind of like a little step function going up, right? And you can see on the left it's the same thing. We have some people who are willing to buy different quantities at different prices, and as we build the cumulative order book on the bid side, we get another upward sloping graph on the left. So you can see this is the same way it's going to look, roughly speaking, right? Of course, it will have different steepness depending on the depth of the book, in other words, the quantity of things that people want to buy or sell. It's going to be looking similar for any asset. You can look at for shares of equity, stock, right? You can look for it in bond markets or anything really, right? You can construct the same thing for cars or houses, etc. Right? It will basically be the same idea. So it just takes more work to aggregate the information, unlike in a centralized system. Okay? Any questions so far? Okay. Let me do a quick time check here. Got 10 minutes. Good stuff. All right, so let's get back to our. And so when we do some kind of decision analysis as to whether we want to do one thing or another thing, in general, what we're going to do is we're going to say, well, am I going to be better off at the end of the day if I do this or if I do that? So for example, if we're looking at, say, a vehicle purchasing decision, and we're saying, do I want to buy this new car, do I want to use this new car, or do I want to buy this used car, right? So you're going to say, well, number one, you need to know what are the cash outflows associated with the different alternatives. Right? So for example, when you're going to use the car, we can figure out what's going to be your what's the amount of initial premium you have to pay, the monthly payments, the interest, right? What's going to be the maximum number of miles you can drive until it starts charging you rip-off fees for the extra miles you drive, right? Et cetera, and figure out what are all the cash flows associated with that. And as far as the benefits that you get, it's relatively easy to determine when it comes to leasing, because you know that the lease is paid for the term of 3 years, 4 years, whatever, for lease, and you have a maximum number of miles you can drive before they take you the mileage fees. So you benefited so many years of transportation out of this vehicle, right? So then you say, okay, and at the end of the day, you just, you lease it over, give it back to them, and you're done. That's it, right? So it's a pretty cut and dry transaction, right? You know exactly what the term back is going to be, right? So you say, say, 20 years, right? You're going to spend, I don't know, make up some numbers, right? You're do it, spend, I don't know, $4,000 a year, everything's done. Right, your lease payments, your, I don't know, estimate for gas mileage, how much you drive, insurance for the lease, et cetera, that's what it's estimate a year or something. Right, and then again, in 4 years, right, you're done. Right, goes back. So if you actually buy a new car, you say, well, what is going to be my main outcome? Right? So first of all, you say, okay, so maybe this new car will cost, I don't know, maybe $20,000. Right? 25, right? So what's going to be your cash outflow? So if you buy it for cash outright, this is going to be minus $25,000. Right? If you buy it, and you can do it. You can do it whatever you want. Whether you're going to estimate how much driving you do, what's your gas mileage differ, what's your expense in gas, and various maintenance. And so you figure out that what you were going to do for 4 years, and if there are other expenses you're going to do right? Now to make the two decisions comparable, you're going to estimate, okay, at the end of 20 years, imagine that I'm going to sell this car. Right? So I want to count, what is my benefit over 4 years. Right? So at the end of the lease, it's done, you have nothing. At the end of the purchase car, in 4 years, you still have a car. Right? So you can say, you can go around, it's not the easiest thing in the world to estimate what your car is going to be worth in 4 years, but you can look at what other similar cars are worth when they, so the cars that were new 4 years ago and now are 4 years old, right? How much are they worth as percent of their selling price? You can estimate how much you can recover if you sell your car on the used car market, right? So you're going to right? And then the end is going to be plus recover. And say, okay, well, how much money am I out over these 4 years? if I lease the car or if I bought a new car. And then you say, okay, what if I buy a used car? So number one, it will be you'll be spending less money, right? Maybe instead of spending $25,000 on a new car, you buy a 2-year-old car and you spend like $15,000. So you save money up front, right? And now the money right, but at the same time, maybe you have to estimate slightly higher maintenance costs because maybe the warranty on the various parts of the car have already run out in years, and they might have to have. It's not trivial to estimate what your maintenance costs on the car would be, but you can look up. There are actually websites that tell you what are the rewards for the different maintenance costs of certain things. These are the things that are and then at the end of 4 years, you'll say, okay, how much can I sell this car for? Now it will be a 6-year-old car, will have so many miles on it, right? How much can I sell it for? I don't know. Again, you have to collect the data, right? A lot of these decisions involve collecting actual data so you figure out what are your costs and where are your recovery, right? You collect some data, and you get some kind of recovery covering sales costs. So then you compare what is the better deal for you, right? So some of this is not necessarily monitoring. Maybe you really like having a new car, and you'll say, I'm going to say it's worth, an extra $2,000 to have a new car, right? $2,000, right? Or something like that. Or maybe it's worth $2,000. Do not have to worry that if something breaks in the car, that it's not yours, you're renting it. So if something breaks, you can say, guys, it broke, give me another car, right? So maybe for something like this, right? So, again, maybe, if you're estimating your maintenance cost of the car, then, cost, takes spending half a day at the mechanic, after leaving the car, after another car, so you put in that, I'll add some more costs, to the sort of expected time I have to spend using the car and stuff right? But at the end of the day, in order to make a good decision, you have to know what are the trade-offs, right? All you know right now is that you need some kind of a mechanism of transportation. So you need to decide what's going to be the most efficient and the best way to acquire some transportation that leaves you in a better position at the end, right? So think of it like making, you're trying to make a positive expected value decision for acquiring transportation. All right, so if it turns out, for example, that this has a total cost of say right? So one of them is going to be more than the other, one of them is going to be less. It's up to you to figure out what's going to be the best. Right? You have to spend a little bit of time to make a decision. Right? So this is the basic idea. We will dig some more into some details of sourcing and probably converting mortgages and all those details. And we'll go from there. Please don't forget to do your homework. And I'll see you next week.